The storm arrived without warning. Rain slammed against the narrow mountain road as Mira Hale stumbled through the darkness, her coat soaked through, boots slipping against mud and stone. The wind howled like a living thing, clawing at her hair, her breath, her resolve. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to turn back, but there was nowhere to return to. She was running from a life that had already collapsed. The accident, the betrayal, the truth she hadn't been meant to survive. Her lungs burned as she lifted her gaze and froze. A house, not a cabin, not a ruin, but a solid structure carved into the mountainside. Lights glowing faintly through tall windows like a promise she didn't trust. It stood alone, untouched by nearby villages, as if the world had forgotten it on purpose. Mira hesitated. She had learned the hard way that shelter always came with a price. Thunder cracked overhead. With no other choice, she staggered forward and knocked. Lucian Vale had not expected company. The house was warded, isolated by design. No traveler found it unless fate itself bent the road. When the knock echoed through the stone halls, Lucian rose slowly from his chair, dark eyes narrowing. Impossible. No one came here by accident. He approached the door silently, senses stretched thin. Beyond the heavy oak he felt it, a presence unfamiliar, fragile, burning bright and unstable. Human, and something else. He opened the door. A woman collapsed into his arms. She was shaking violently, soaked, her pulse frantic beneath his fingers. Dark hair clung to her face, and her eyes, when they fluttered open briefly, were the color of storm clouds. "Please," she whispered, "I just need somewhere to stay." Lucian's jaw tightened. He should have turned her away. Instead, he pulled her inside. The door closed behind them with a sound far too final. Mira woke to warmth, not the artificial heat of machines, but the deep, steady comfort of a fire burning nearby. Thick blankets surrounded her, unfamiliar but clean, and the smell of rain and wood smoke lingered in the air. She sat up too quickly, panic flooding her chest. "You're safe," a voice said calmly. She looked up. The man standing across the room was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that looked old-fashioned but immaculately kept. His hair was black, his face sharp and composed, and his eyes were unsettling. Not cruel, not cold, ancient. "Where am I?" Mira asked. "My home," he replied. "You came seeking shelter." Her throat tightened. "I didn't mean to intrude. I'll leave as soon as the storm clears." "You won't," he said. The certainty in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "Because of the storm?" she asked carefully. "No," Lucian said. "Because you cannot." She threw the blankets aside and stood, swaying slightly. "I don't understand." Lucian studied her for a long moment, as though measuring something invisible. "You crossed a boundary last night, one that most never see." Her pulse spiked. "What boundary? The kind that cannot be undone?" Mira spent the day in restless confusion. The storm raged on, sealing the house in with walls of rain and fog. No signal, no visible road. Every window showed only shifting gray, as though the world beyond had been erased. Lucian moved through the house like a shadow, silent, controlled, always watching her without staring. He brought her food, dry clothes, answers that were frustratingly incomplete. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes." "For how long?" "A very long time." She laughed nervously. "You sound like a storybook recluse." His lips curved faintly. "Stories exist for a reason." That night, Mira dreamed. She stood on a cliff beneath a blood-red sky, her hands glowing with light that burned her skin but didn't hurt. Below, Lucian knelt, bound by chains made of shadow, his gaze lifted toward her, not in fear, but in recognition. "You chose this," a voice whispered. She woke screaming. Lucian was at her side instantly. "You're dreaming the bond," he said quietly. She stared at him in terror. What bond? The silence that followed was heavy. Then slowly he said, "When you asked for shelter, you didn't just enter my home, you entered my fate." Her breath caught. "That's not possible." "No," Lucian replied, "it's inevitable." He finally told her the truth at dawn. The house was a sanctuary, yes, but also a prison. Lucian was its keeper, bound by an ancient vow that tied his life, power, and destiny to the one who crossed its threshold in need and was accepted. "You saved me from the storm," Mira whispered. "I bound myself to you," he corrected, "without knowing who or what you are." Her heart thundered. "I didn't mean to." "I know," he said softly. "That's what makes it dangerous." "What happens now?" she asked. Lucian's gaze darkened. "Now, your fate and mine are intertwined. If you fall, so do I. If I am claimed, you will be pulled with me." She shook her head, backing away. "This is insane. I just needed a place to hide. And I needed nothing," he said. "Which is why fate chose you." The house creaked around them, as if listening. Mira pressed a hand to her chest, realizing with sudden clarity that something inside her had shifted, anchored, tethered, claimed by something far older than fear. She'd taken his shelter, unknowingly. She had given him her fate. Mira didn't sleep again. Every creak of the house sounded intentional now, every shadow too aware. The warmth that had comforted her the night before felt deceptive, like a lure wrapped in kindness. She sat near the fire, knees drawn to her chest, watching Lucian from the corner of her eye as he stood by the tall windows, gaze fixed on the fog beyond the glass. "You keep looking out there like something is coming," she said quietly. "Something already has," he replied. Her fingers tightened in the blanket. "You said my fate is tied to yours. I need to understand what that means, completely. No more half answers." Lucian turned slowly, his expression grave. "If I tell you everything, you may never forgive me for letting you stay. Then tell me anyway." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, he nodded once. "Very well." He gestured for her to follow. The lower level of the house was colder, carved directly into the mountain stone. Torches flared to life as Lucian descended the steps, illuminating symbols etched into the walls, circles, sigils, markings that hummed faintly as Mira passed them. Her skin prickled. "What is this place?" she asked. "A threshold," Lucian said. "Between what was, what is, and what should never be." They stopped before a massy, iron door. Lucian did not touch it. "I am not human," he said calmly. Mira laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. "That's not funny. I am not joking." Her laughter died. "What are you then?" Lucian met her gaze fully now. The restraint he'd worn like armor slipped, just enough. "I am a warden," he said, "bound to this house, this land, and the ancient forces sealed beneath it. I was not born, I was made." The air grew heavy, pressing against Mira's chest. "And me?" she whispered. "What am I to all this?" Lucian's voice softened. "You are the key fate chose." He told her everything. Centuries ago, something ancient had tried to cross into the human world, an entity that fed on chaos, destiny, and broken lives. It could not be destroyed, only bound. Lucian had been forged as its jailer, his existence tethered to the sanctuary that kept it contained. The price? He could never leave, he could never love. And if ever he chose to shelter a soul in true need, truly accept them, the bond would transfer. "The keeper's fate passes to the sheltered," Lucian said quietly. "Two lives bound, two destinies intertwined, power shared, risk doubled." Mira staggered back. "So because you helped me, I'm trapped here?" "No," he said immediately. "You are bound to me, but not imprisoned. You can leave the house." Her breath shuddered in relief. "But I cannot," he continued. "And if the entity senses you fully, it will try to claim you instead." Her stomach dropped. "Claim me how?" Lucian's jaw tight. Ned. As its vessel, Mira fled the room. She needed air, space, reality. She ran up the stone steps and burst into the main hall, chest heaving. Everything felt wrong, her body, her thoughts, even time itself. She pressed her back to the wall, sliding down until she was seated on the floor. This isn't real, she whispered. It can't be. Lucian followed but kept his distance. You're shaking, he said, because my life ended the moment I knocked on your door. No, he said firmly. Your life changed. There is a difference. She laughed hysterically. You sound like you're trying to comfort yourself. Perhaps, he admitted. I never wanted this for you. That doesn't make it better. I know. That honesty broke her. Tears spilled freely now, rage, fear, grief all tangled together. I was already running from something, she cried. I lost everything. And now this fate. You're telling me I never even had a choice. Lucian knelt in front of her, careful not to touch her. Fate doesn't ask permission, he said quietly, but it responds to strength, and you are stronger than you know. She glared at him through tears. You don't know anything about me. I know you crossed a boundary meant to repel the unworthy, he said, and it opened for you. That night, Mira tried to leave. She packed what little she had and stepped outside, only to freeze. The road was gone, not hidden, not blocked, gone. In its place, endless forest, unfamiliar and shifting, the air thick with prez. Sure, that made her head spin. She stumbled back inside, heart racing. Lucian was already there. I didn't do this, he said. Then who did? She demanded. The entity, he replied. It knows you're here now. Her blood ran cold. You said I could leave. I believed you could, he said grimly. That was before it sensed you. Days passed strangely. Time warped. Sometimes the sun rose twice, sometimes not at all. Mira began to notice changes, small at first. She could sense the house breathing, hear whispers beneath the walls, feel threads of energy humming in her veins when she touched certain symbols. You're awakening, Lucian said one evening. I don't want to, she snapped. I know. She stared at her hands. What happens if I refuse? The bond will still grow, he replied, but unbalanced power destroys its bearer. So either I become part of this madness, or it kills me. Lucian met her gaze. I will not let it kill you. The promise in his voice was absolute. That night, the entity spoke to her, not aloud, but inside her mind. You don't belong to him, it whispered. You belong to what you could become, Mira screamed. Light burst from her chest, throwing her across the room. The house shook violently, sigils blazing bright as Lucian rushed to her side, grabbing her wrists to ground her. Look at me, he commanded. Stay with me. Her eyes glowed faintly, silver, unfamiliar. I can feel it, she gasped. It wants me, and it will never have you, Lucian said fiercely. Something shifted between them in that moment. Fear deepening into trust, distance cracking into connection. Because now she understood. She hadn't just given him her fate. She'd awakened his heart. And that, more than the entity, more than the bond, was the most dangerous thing of all. Mira woke with Lucian's hands still gripping her wrists, not painfully, anchoring her. The glow had faded from her eyes, but the echo of power still hummed beneath her skin, restless and unfamiliar. The house was silent again, as though holding its breath. She swallowed. Did I hurt you? Lucian loosened his hold but didn't move away. No, you stopped yourself. I didn't know how. Instinct, he said, or awakening. She pushed herself upright, her heart racing. I don't want this power. I didn't ask for it. No one ever does, Lucian replied quietly. Power answers need, not consent. She laughed bitterly. That seems unfair. So is fate, he said. The days that followed changed everything. Lucian began to teach her, not rituals, not spells, but awareness. how to breathe through the hum beneath her skin, how to ground herself against the pull of the entity's whispers, how to feel the house not as a prison, but as an extension of the bond they now shared. "Close your eyes," he instructed one morning. "Place your hand on the wall." She did and gasped. The stone was warm, alive. "It's responding to you," he said softly. "It never did that with me." Her pulse spiked. "That's not comforting." "Oh," he agreed. "It's extraordinary. The house recognized her, chose her. That terrified her more than anything else. At night, the entity grew bolder. It no longer whispered, it waited. Mira felt it in her dreams, pressing against her consciousness, like a patient predator. "He is bound." "You are not," it murmured. "You could be free." She woke drenched in sweat, Lucian already at her side. "It's lying," she whispered. "It always does," he said. "But lies are strongest when they touch truth." She turned to him sharply. "You think I want freedom at the cost of your life?" His jaw tightened. "I think you would sacrifice yourself to spare others," he said. "And that is what frightens me." Lucian began to change, subtly at first. He slept less. The sigils along the walls dimmed. The weight of centuries pressed heavier on his shoulders, bending him under the strain of a bond never meant to be shared. "You're weakening," Mira said one evening. "I'm adjusting," he replied. "You're lying." A pause. "Yes," he admitted, "but not to you, to myself." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat beneath his skin. "What aren't you telling me?" Lucian exhaled slowly. "The bond is shifting. You are growing stronger faster than expected. And you?" He met her gaze. "I am becoming mortal." Her breath caught. "That's not possible." "It is when fate rebalances itself," he said. "A keeper cannot exist without purpose. And my purpose is transferring to you." Panic surged. "No, I won't take your place." "You already are," he said gently. "Just by surviving." Mira refused to accept it. She spent days exploring the house's deeper corridors, searching ancient texts etched into stone, desperate for another answer. She learned fragments about cycles, sacrifices, and chosen vessels who had come before. All of them had died. "Lucian," she whispered one night, holding a broken tablet, "this ends with one of us gone." "Yes," he said, "it always does." She looked at him, fury and grief colliding. "Then we changed the ending." He almost smiled. The entity sensed defiance. The house shook violently as shadows spilled from the lower levels, warping the air, whispering her name in voices too many to count. Lucian drew her behind him, sigils flaring along his arms for the first time. "Stay with me," he said. "No," she said, stepping beside him. "With me." Power surged through her veins, not wild now but focused. The entity laughed. "Two vessels," it crooned. Even better, Mira felt its pull. Temptation, promise, escape. She reached for Lucian's hand. Their bond flared. The house responded. For the first time in centuries, Lucian felt something other than duty, hope. After the attack, Lucian collapsed. Mira caught him, heart pounding. "You're fading," she whispered. "This is my fault." "No," he said weakly. "You are my choice." She held him close, realization crashing over her. The bond wasn't a transfer, it was a convergence. The entity had been wrong. They weren't two vessels. They were two halves, and fate had never intended one to stand alone. That night, Mira made a decision. She stood before the iron door beneath the house, the one Lucian had never opened. "I won't replace you," she said aloud. "I won't free it by becoming what it wants." The house answered with a low hum. "But I will bind it with you." The door trembled. Lucian appeared beside her, pale but resolute. "If you do this, there is no going back." She met his gaze, steady. "I already crossed that line when I knocked." Light flared between them as they pressed their palms together. The sigils rewrote themselves. Fate shifted. The iron door screamed as it opened a fraction, and for the first time since the beginning, the entity was afraid. The iron door did not open easily. It resisted them with a force older than memory, vibrating violently as if the mountain itself protested. The symbols carved into its surface bled light, searing Mira's eyes. Lucian stood beside her, shoulders squared, his hand firm around hers. "You feel it, don't you?" he said. "Yes," Mira whispered. "It's not just locked, it's afraid." The door pulsed in response, as if the thing behind it had heard her. "You cannot hold me," the entity hissed inside her mind. "You are not forged for eternity." "Neither are you," Mira replied aloud. She stepped forward. The chamber beyond the door was vast and hollow, carved from obsidian stone that swallowed light. At its center floated a mass of shadow and fracture, shifting shapes folding into one another, eyes forming and dissolving in endless succession. The entity. Lucian's grip tightened. "Do not listen to it," Mira nodded, but her heart raced as its presence pressed against her consciousness. "He will die," it whispered sweetly. "If you bind yourself here, his mortality will consume him." Her throat closed. Lucian heard nothing, but he saw the change in her expression. "What did it say?" he asked quietly. "That it wants me to doubt," she replied. "Which means we're right." The entity lunged. The air shattered. Lucian threw up a barrier of light, staggering as the impact tore through his defenses. Mira reacted without thinking, power surging from her chest, weaving with his, reinforcing the shield. Their energies aligned naturally, perfectly. The entity recoiled, shrieking. "Impossible," it snarled. "You were never meant to merge. Neither were we meant to be alone," Mira said. The battle was not physical, it was memory, fear. The entity attacked through visions, forcing Mira to relive the moment she lost everything before she came to the house. The betrayal, the cold, the hopelessness that drove her to Lucian's door. Then it showed her the future. Lucian dying, aging, fading, his body collapsing into dust as centuries finally claimed him. She screamed. Lucian staggered, clutching his chest. "Mira, don't look!" She grabbed his face. "Look at me. You are not your past, and you are not its prophecy." Her power surged, not as force, but as certainty. The vision Shah. Teared. Lucian fell to his knees. Mira knelt with him, heart breaking. "This is the cost," he whispered, "to bind it fully. I will lose what remains of my immortality, and I'll gain it," she said. Balanced, he looked up sharply. "No, I won't let you be trapped here forever." She cupped his face. "I won't be, not alone." The house trembled violently, as if reacting to her words. Ancient mechanisms awakened. Sigils shifted, rewriting themselves into patterns unseen before. The entity screamed in fury. "You cannot rewrite the pact." "We're not rewriting it," Mira said. "We're completing it." The truth unfolded like a revelation. The pact had never been meant for one keeper. It required two, a guardian and an anchor, one bound to time, one bound to choice. Lucian had been the guardian. Mira was the anchor. Together, they could contain the entity without sacrifice, without imprisonment. But the price was connection, permanent, unbreakable. Lucian stared at her in stunned realization. "All this time, it was waiting for you, and you were waiting for me," she said softly. The final binding required consent. Lucian hesitated, not from fear, but from love. "If we do this," he said, voice shaking, "your fate will be tied to mine forever. You will feel my pain, my losses, my fears." She smiled sadly. "I already do." He closed his eyes. They pressed their foreheads together. "I choose this," Lucian said. "I choose you," Mira replied. Light exploded outward. The entity was dragged screaming into the center of the chamber, chains of energy forged from their combined power wrapping around it. The house roared as if exhaling after centuries of tension. The entity shrank, compressed, sealed, until only silence remained. The chamber collapsed into stillness. It was done. Mira collapsed. Lucian caught her breathing hard. For a terrifying moment, neither of them moved. Then, Lucian laughed, a real laugh, breathless, human. "I'm still here," he said, astonished. She laughed too, tears streaming down her face. "So am I." The house responded warmly, no longer oppressive but alive with approval. They had changed it, together. Later, as dawn broke for the first time without distortion, Mira stood at the doorway of the house. The forest beyond had settled into something recognizable, paths forming naturally. Lucian joined her. "The road is back," he said quietly. She looked at it, then back at him. "I'm not leaving," she said. He smiled softly. "I hoped you'd say that." But even as peace settled, Mira felt it, a shift. The entity was bound, but not destroyed, and fate, once challenged, never remained silent for long. The silence after the binding was unfamiliar. Not the heavy, watchful quiet that had once filled the house, but something gentler, like a held breath finally released. Mira noticed it in the smallest ways. The warmth of sunlight lingering longer on the stone floors, the steady rhythm of the house no longer pulsing with tension, the absence of whispers in her mind. Yet peace did not mean stillness. Change had come. Lucian was the first to feel it. He woke one morning with a sharp ache in his chest, nothing dangerous but unmistakably human. He pressed a hand over his heart, startled by the irregular rhythm beneath his palm. Mira sensed it instantly. She sat up in bed, breath hitching. "What happened?" He smiled faintly. I think I pulled a muscle." She stared at him, then laughed in disbelief. "You've never had muscles that could pull." "No," he agreed. "I suppose I do now." The realization settled between them, heavy and wondrous. Lucian was aging, slowly, naturally, and Mira felt it too, not as pain, but as balance. Her body hummed with an unfamiliar steadiness, as though time itself had loosened its grip on her. They had not escaped fate, they had shared it. Days turned into weeks. The house adjusted around them, reshaping itself not as a fortress, but as a home. Locked corridors opened, sealed windows welcomed light. The lower chambers, the ones that once whispered danger, fell silent, their purpose fulfilled. Mira explored freely now, no longer fearing what lived beneath the walls. Lucian watched her with a quiet awe. "You walk like you belong here," he said one evening as she traced her fingers along the old stone. "I think I do," she replied. "Not because fate says so, but because I choose to." The word struck him deeply. Choice. That had always been the missing piece. The world beyond the forest began to return. Travelers appeared on the road again, confused but unharmed, drawn by the subtle warmth of the house. Mira greeted them cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. Shelter was offered, but never blindly. The house no longer claimed souls, it tested intent. Those who sought refuge in honesty were welcomed. Those who carried malice felt the path turn away from them. Lucian watched this change with quiet relief. "The burden is lighter now," he said. "It no longer rests on one set of shoulders." Mira met his gaze. That was never fair to begin with. But fate had one final test. One night, Mira dreamed of the entity, not as a monster, but as a shadow curled tightly in chains of light. "You have caged me," it murmured. "But cages decay." She woke with a start, heart racing. Lucian was awake too. "It's still there," she said. "Yes," he replied, "bound, dormant, but not erased." She swallowed. "What happens when we're gone?" Lucian was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Then others will come." She frowned. "Others?" He nodded. not replacements, successors. The house will no longer force fate. It will invite those willing to choose it. Mira exhaled slowly. They'll have a choice, she said. That's the difference. Seasons passed. Lucian's hair silvered slightly at the temples. He grew fond of small things, warm bread, sore muscles after work, the comfort of rest. Mira felt time differently now. Its sharp edges softened, years flowing. Without urgency, they were neither mortal nor eternal. They were enough. One evening, as autumn painted the forest gold, Lucian took Mira's hand at the threshold of the house, the same place where everything had begun. I hesitated once, he said softly. She smiled. I know, and you gave me your fate without knowing. I would do it again, she replied. This time knowingly. He squeezed her hand. Then let me give you something in return. He knelt. Mira gasped, laughing through sudden tears. Lucian, this is not a promise of forever, he said. Only of choosing you. Every day fate allows. She dropped to her knees with him. That's all I've ever wanted. They sealed it not with magic, but with intention. The house approved. Years later, travelers would speak of the place in hushed voices, a house that stood at the edge of the world, a man who had once guarded eternity and chose humanity, a woman who arrived with nothing and became the balance between fate and freedom. They would say the house still listened, still watched, still waited, not to claim, but to welcome. And at its heart, two souls remained, not bound by fear or prophecy, but by choice. More stories will keep coming. So please don't forget to like and subscribe.